Hello and welcome to this session where we talk about how Business Central users can collaborate in Microsoft Teams. My name is Mike Borg-Cardona. I'm a product manager at Microsoft, and today I'm joined by my colleague Anders.
Hi Mike, I'm Anders Nørskov. I'm a software developer in the Business Central client team.
And we're going to show you what's new in 2022 Release Wave 2 when it comes to Teams integration. Now, Microsoft is at the forefront of technology, which empowers our customers to adapt and really thrive in this new world of hybrid work. And luckily for us in the SMB space, Microsoft Teams is not just for the large enterprises. Organizations of every size, really, that need to connect people together, no matter where they work, how they work, and when they work, can benefit from using Microsoft Teams. Now, supporting flexible work styles like this is really just the beginning. By combining Business Central and Teams, we are building a new generation of collaborative applications that help people work together to achieve their common goals. Now, Business Central Online is designed for these multiplayer experiences. If you're working in the web client, you can kickstart a conversation using the Share menu and then share to Teams. If you're working in Teams itself, there is no need to switch apps. You can look up business contacts within context. You can find all kinds of details, the history, such as their last order, and also their insights like late payments. And when you're inside Teams, you can paste a link, and that expands into this compact card that you can share to a chat to give your coworkers a bit more context so they can actually dig into those details without having to leave Teams as well. And now we're introducing a whole new way of bringing business data into the flow of your work. You can now embed Business Central inside a tab in any Teams chat or Teams channel. And it's very powerful, it's seamlessly integrated. And here what we're doing is we're opening a window to Business Central, which means you can view up-to-date records, you can edit and create new data. And all of this is just protected by the same business and validation rules, as well as our full security model. It's enhanced by your extensions, your customizations, and of course, your personalization as well. And all of this is inside Teams where people can discuss, they can delegate, collaborate, and really make data-driven decisions faster together. So, in this session, we're going to look at different ways in which you can create that tab inside Teams. And of course, for developers and even consultants and salespeople, stay with us as we're going to show you how you can make Teams a part of your solution as well. Hey, Anders, why don't we add a few tabs to our team channel? Could you show us that?
Sure, let's jump right in and see what the experience looks like. So I'm here in my team, the procurement team, and we have a supplies channel that we use for all our communication about supplies we need in our everyday work. One thing that we always need in this channel is the vendors list from Business Central. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add that. We click Add a tab. We find the Business Central icon right here. And this is going to load up a Add a tab page with recommendations for the tabs you can add from Business Central. And you see here we have a list of content that is recommended. I open it up and vendors is in there. So I pick vendors and I'm gonna choose to save that to the channel. What this does is that this adds the vendor tab to the top of the channel so it's available for all the users inside the channel to collaborate on. Now that was a little fast, so let's take a step back and go through the process again step by step to see what options users have when adding tabs inside Teams. Tabs is a very key concept to the team collaboration story. You can add them from both the context of a conversation or a channel inside a team. When you click it up, you see a bunch of different options and integrations you can choose to embed into your conversations. You'll see integrations like Power BI, PowerPoint, and third-party integrations. The one we're going to choose is Business Central. This brings up the Business Central Add a tab page. This page is populated with content that are recommended for that specific user. The content is taken from the user's role center bookmarks, so it should all be relevant and recognizable for the user. If I see the content in here, we can see customers, vendors, item, bank accounts, and chart of accounts. If I jump back into Business Central, we'll see that these are the same bookmarks that are on the role center. Because they're bookmarks, users also have the option of going in and choosing a new bookmark, like sales orders. This new bookmark is now added to the role center, and it's also added to the list of content available in the recommended content page. As you see right here, we have sales orders.
Wow, wait a minute, Anna. So here we've got Business Central intelligently recommending the content that makes sense for you based on your role center, based on your bookmarks. And I guess, would this work even for custom roles as well, custom role centers?
Great question, Mike. Yes, that will exactly work. It takes the role center that is currently assigned to the user, and it doesn't matter if it's one of the role centers provided by Business Central or if it's a custom role center developed by a partner.
Right, so I could have something totally custom, like my, my vehicle management role center, and the list of recommended content there would match my role, which is, here's your list of vehicles, here's your list of servicing, your list of rentals, and you can bring all of those with you into Teams as well. That's fantastic.
Exactly. If that's the items you have bookmarked for your role center, that's the items that are going to show up here. There's also an option for partners to customize what shows up in here, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. If I pick the sales orders, you'll see that the preferred view light up, and that's because we have views defined for a sales order page. If I go into the sales order page in Business Central, you'll see the views here defined, which is used to filter out the content we see on the page. These views are also available to add as preferred views to the tab you're adding inside Teams. This means that the tab will be hard-coded to show this view as the preferred view every time you open it, making it easier to have a shared view of the data you share inside the team. Now, for most users working in Business Central, one company is enough, but we have some users that use multiple companies. If you look at the top of the Add a Tab page, you'll see there's an indication of what current company you're working in the context of. If you expand this, you're presented with the option to change between the environments and companies you have available, which means that you can add tabs for just the right company and environment you're working on.
So Anas, what this means, I guess, is that once you've chosen your environment, your company, and the content, which is going to show up in that tab, the tab contents are pretty much locked to that environment and company, right? And there's no switching across companies or environments once you've done that. It is locked to that database.
That is exactly right. Once we've added the tab has a hard-coded URL that identifies both the environment and the company of the tab. So it means that once it's added, you can't change it. With that being said, you can always go in and delete or edit the tab once it's added to make it reflect the data you want it to show. If users need to add a tab that's not part of the recommended content from the Add a Tab page, there's another way to do it. Inside the Add a Tab page, you'll see a button to paste a Business Central link instead of choosing from the recommended content. If you go here, you're presented with a simple screen that lets you define the name of the tab and the URL you want it to point to. After this, it's just a matter of going into Business Central, picking the page you want to add into your conversation, take the URL, paste that in, and add a name for the tab. You can then go ahead and save that, which will add that tab directly into your channel and conversation. With these options, we're making it super easy for users to take content from Business Central and embed into their collaboration in Teams.
So one final question. Who can create a tab like this?
Any Business Central user that has a Business Central license and has the Teams Business Central app installed can add tabs to Teams.
Fantastic. So that can be, everything from department managers to salespeople to warehouse workers. We're really empowering everyone to bring this data into this context.
Exactly. Everyone can customize their team workspace to fit the needs they have.
Well, now that you've added a few tabs, do you mind if I just go and take a look myself, just to see what it looks like from my standpoint as another person in the team channel?
Yeah, go ahead.
So here I am in the supplies channel where Anas has added a couple of tabs. And as you can see, the tabs appear at the top. And in fact, as somebody who's going to use a tab, I also need to have the Business Central app for Teams installed to actually see these tabs in my channel. Here I'm going to click on the Vendors tab, get access to this data, take a look around. Now, of course, the reason why I'm seeing this here is also because I have a Business Central license and I have permission to view the vendors list, which means everything from I have record level permissions, I have object level permissions, I have permission to the company, and I have permission to this environment. So the full security stack of Business Central applies here. Now, in fact, one of the things which we're going to talk about in a separate session is how, for the first time, users who don't have a Business Central license, who only have a Microsoft 365 license, will actually be able to access this data as well. But I'll leave that for that other session. We'll have a little mention of it as well towards the end of this session. Here inside the vendors list, looks very familiar. In fact, I can do things like I can search for a particular vendor from my list. So it's fully interactive, as you can see. I can drill down to bring up the details. Here in the details, I've got my fact boxes, I've got my actions, and I can act on this data from right here inside Teams. And it's also editable. So here I can quickly change the address to be, instead of Lake Avenue, to be Lake Street. There we go. That has now been saved back to Business Central. So the tab really is a highly focused space. It's literally about the vendors list. There's no ability to navigate to anything else other than the vendors list. And Teams, of course, provide some surrounding capabilities as well, which help me adapt to our team's needs. So for example, I can drag to reorder my tabs here at the top of the page. I've also got this convenient menu with a couple of really nice things, like the ability to open this up, pop it out into its own window, so I can do things like multitasking, and I can work in that window if some distraction pops up that I need to go and deal with. I can rename the tab and remove the tab, and everyone in the Teams channel can do this. One of my favorite features here, of course, are the ability to have a conversation alongside this tab. So the whole team is here, the whole team is in this channel. They can see the contents of the vendors list and have a conversation and say, has anyone contacted Fabricam yet? And people can converse about things, delegate, and so on and so forth. The last thing I want to show you here is that you can actually focus even more on your Business Central content. If you go here to the menu and expand the tab, it's actually going to give you a little bit more working space as well, so that you can have your chat and your tab with Business Central data right there for you to work with. So that's how you add and use a tab inside Teams. And it's really great for lists of records in this case, especially when they're highly focused, using filters and sorting and list views. And if you spend a bunch of time in Teams, this is something which will be a big time saver and will really reduce a lot of app switching for you to look up data and bring it back into that context. If you're working on a project, this is something you can use to, again, create a digital workspace where people, processes, and data can come together for the success of that project. And use this to increase your team's performance as well. You can rally the team around a common mission and have everyone have that same view of information from Business Central. You can watch that list of records burn down over time and really monitor how things change, because this data is live. Now, these are all use cases where people need to collaborate together. And if there's one thing that trumps collaboration, that's self-serve. So how you can use things like this to actually empower others to find the data that they need by simply adding a tab with the contents that is relevant for them and for their job and for their role. So they don't need to ask you for data anymore. They can go and find it there themselves in the context of their team. So next, let's take a look at how a card can actually turn into a tab. So here I am in Business Central on one of my sales invoices, and I'd like to share this particular invoice with Anas here. So I'm going to go to the Share menu, I'm going to say Share to Teams, and the Share window will appear. And now this is where I can choose who am I going to share to, and also include a message along with the link to this record. So first I will start with picking my recipients. I can say, check this out. Now, in this case, because I have the Business Central app for Teams installed, this window has automatically expanded that link into the sales invoice card. If I didn't have the Business Central app for Teams installed, I'd get a banner here which suggests that I can get it installed, because it adds this additional nice handy feature here where the card gets automatically included. This is also new in Wave 2. And now I can choose to send my message to Anas with either just the link or the link and the card. But let's send all of this as it is, because it's going to be mighty useful for him to get to the details of the sales invoice without having to leave Teams. So I will hit share here. That is going to submit it to Teams, and I am back in Business Central. I didn't really have to switch apps to do that. Now notice one thing, I didn't have a whole bunch of additional sign-ins to go through or pop-up dialogues. We've streamlined the experience where Business Central talks to Teams to help you just get to your goal faster without all those additional interruptions there as well.
Now that the card has been shared in the chat, anyone in the chat can see the card. But it's when I click the Details button that we open up the Business Central experience, where the permission model is applied to make sure you have access to the content and all the functionality you know is available. From this view, there's another option to actually pin the content if you find that this is something you want to persist in your conversation, and that's the pin action up here. Clicking this will give you a short notification down here that says the tab has been pinned. And if I close it down, you can see that that's now part of the chat I had with Mike. For every content you have pinned, you can go in and rename the content. As Mike said, you can remove it again, but you can also go ahead and click settings, which will let you update the actual content on the page. This is useful if you added a company that's been renamed or environment that no longer exists, and it just lets you have full control over the content that is shown in the tabs.
Thanks, Hannes. So now we've seen how pinning is the second way to create a tab, except this time it just comes from a card. And this is perfect for when you want to take a piece of business data inside a conversation and really make that sticky so that it doesn't get lost. Everybody can refer back to it. And that happens very often when, as the chat evolves, content, as we all know, sort of scrolls out of view, right? So pinning becomes vital here to bring the team together and keep them focused on the data that matters. Here we used it to shine a spotlight on a sales invoice. It's great for things that are sort of long-running tasks where the team has to build up the content in that invoice, adding sales lines, for example. But you could really pin anything that is shared as a card. So it could be a list of items, it could be a budget, it could be a bank reconciliation. All of those things can start their life out as a card and then be pinned. Try it out with your custom objects as well. Any custom page objects that you create and then share as a card can follow this very same route. Okay, so now it's time, I think, for us to get a little bit technical. So Hannes, why don't you show us how you can do these same kind of things, but from a developer standpoint?
Yeah, the first capability I want to draw your attention to is the capability to add tabs programmatically into Teams. This means that you can set up an environment for your users with teams and channels and tabs added to them without the user having to do anything. What we're using to do this is the Microsoft Graph endpoint called the tabs endpoint. This needs you to specify the team and channel ID of where you want the tab to show up, and to specify a payload that shows what the content of the tab will be. Here you can see that we're adding a tab called Overdue Sales Orders, and in the configuration section of the body here, you can see we define the content of the actual tab. There are two things we want to call out here, and that is, when you're doing this, you're binding the tab to a Teams app. So it's important that you're using the Business Central Teams app ID, which is going to be documented in the documentation that we're linking to at the end of the section. It's also important to note that for the content URL part of the payload, it's important that you add the /teams path to the URL. This tells the web client that it should deliver a team-specific view, but more importantly, it tells the web client that the authentication scheme it should be using is one based on the Teams platform. If you don't add this, your tab will not be able to authenticate. Now let's do a quick demo to show you how you can add a tab. This is a really quick and easy scenario where we create a team, we create a channel, and we add a tab to that channel. So the first thing we want to do is to create the team, and here you can see that we're using the Microsoft Graph Explorer to call the Microsoft Graph endpoint. Now you can use any tool you'd like to do this, be it PowerShell, AL Code, Power Automate, or something else. The only thing that matters is that you can call the Graph endpoint. Here we're using the Teams endpoint to add a new team to our Teams organization called Warehouse. Next move, we'll use the ID for that team and add a channel to it called Sales Order Complaints. And finally, we're going to take that API we showed you earlier, the Tabs API. We're going to add the IDs from the team and the channel, and we're going to build a payload that'll add a tab we want. So for this, we're adding a sales order tab. You can see that we have the right ID for the Business Central app, and we have the Teams path as part of the content URL. And just like that, you've added a new environment for your users with tabs already enabled as soon as they sign in. Another capability we want to show you is the capability to provide your own recommendations in the Edit tab page. As an AL developer, you can go in and customize the recommendations so they fit exactly the needs of your users. The way you do this is that you're using the onAfterGetPage Actions event. This event, if you subscribe to this event, it'll give you information about the page ID of the user's current role center and the items JSON array. This array contains information about all the recommended items that are going to show up in the list. And with this event, you can hook in and make changes to the array, remove options, add your own content to it, and customize the experience users are getting when they add a tab. You'll see that the structure is quite simple. There's a caption, there's a URL, and there's an optional field to add views to each of the items. I created a small extension just to show you how you can do this as a demo. It's called Update Recommended Content, and as you see, it's subscribing to the AL event. And when the event is triggered, I just go in, I build my own AL object and add it to the list. So my page is always added as part of the content that is recommended for my customers.
Wow, that's a powerful addition to your developer toolbox, isn't it? And what this means is that as an ISV or a reseller, you can now take the concept of tabs and bring that into your solution design. So think about, do you want to provision a whole set of teams, channels, and tabs with the right data from your solution as a sort of a one-shot, one way of setting that up for your customer? Or do you want to automate this in a way that a user can run an action in a certain context, and that AL action can actually trigger creating a tab for whatever reason? So, the sky's the limit here. And you can also create repeatable ways for consultants, for salespeople to work the tab concept and this integration with Teams into their storytelling. So they'll be able to paint a picture of collaborative applications and people coming together to solve problems using your solution as well. Now, what's the first thing you do after you've heard all of this? Well, you go try it out, of course. And if you need additional assistance, here's a couple of resources to help you out. If you're new to working with Business Central and Teams, I've got some links here to help you get started. Here's a link also to get the Business Central app for Teams installed. And for the techies, there's, of course, documentation on how to write that code to automate the creation of tabs and modify that recommended content. Now, join us in the next session where we talk about how you can benefit from enabling access to Business Central for Microsoft 365 licenses at no additional cost. Really interesting session, very much related to what we've shown you here today. And if you're interested in connecting Business Central to more Microsoft apps, then check out Keeping Productive with Microsoft 365, and of course, integrating with Power Platform as well. So we're super excited to see what you do with this new technology and how you apply it to your context, to your situations where people need to come together and collaborate using business data. Share your reactions on Twitter and use our hashtag MSDYN365BC. We love to read these kind of success stories, and we're always eager to hear your feedback as well about how we can improve the story further. So on behalf of the Business Central team, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this great new feature.